heavens, what a delight. And then do you request the sharing of the screen or?
No, I don't have to do anything. I mean, she just does it in Zoom for me to be able to share.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, we are definitely live. Hello, everyone. Oh my gosh, what a thing.
Stand by, everyone. We're just getting set up.
Now, can you share?
I will check. Yes.
Hooray! We have a couple minutes, but we're excited to have you guys join us. We're going to talk about trees.
Awkward silence.
I know. I was like, here we are today. Do we have more people joining us today?
There's supposed to be one more. So I'm not sure though.
Okay.
Where she is yet.
Not a problem. And I think Michelle typically takes away her video then, right?
Yeah, she'll just do a little quick intro and then turn it over to me, and she usually shuts off her video. So that would be fine.
Perfect. I will do that. All right, everyone. Today we're gonna talk about trees. You let me know when you want me. It is officially noon. So
okay, I say go for it. If our other two volunteers join us, they can just join in.
Okay. Wonderful. All right. Hi, everyone. We're so excited for you to join us. And of course, excited for the UW Extension Walworth County Master Gardeners to join us. Today, we're going to talk about trees, which is super exciting. So I'm going to hand it over to Julie. And please feel free to ask questions and we'll answer as quickly as we can. And if we don't get a chance to get to it during the live stream, we will the answers will show up later as well. So please ask us questions.
Great.
All right, here we go.
Thanks, Catherine. Thanks so much, Aram Library. Yes, hi, everybody. My name is Julie. I am with the UW Extension Walworth County office. I'm a horticulture outreach specialist, and I serve Walworth and Rock counties. And we're here today to talk about our top 5 tips for trees. So as Catherine said, if you have a question, and it can be any gardening question, drop it in those comments, and we'll have some time after our top 5 tips to answer those questions. So Catherine, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with everybody and do a little presentation here, and then we'd love to answer any of your questions. So once again, thank you, Aram Library, for hosting this. We are here every week. We've been happy to be here on Fridays at noon. So even if you missed joining us today, you can still watch this program or other recorded programs from Aram Library's Facebook page. You can go to the videos tab and see all of their videos from everything they've been doing. Such great programming going on. We are excited to be here and help with a little bit of gardening advice and some tips and answer your questions. So once again, I am with the University of Wisconsin. I am with the Division of Extension. I am a staff member for Walworth County and Rock County. And our mission is to really connect all of you in the communities where we live with the university and with resources that we have. So we have a lot of information. We have a lot of tools that you can use. And we're just happy to be here to help provide those tools and get you in touch with those resources and where to find more information and connect you with all of that. Our Master Gardeners are with us today. We have Heather, who is in the Master Gardener program training right now, and they have to fulfill certification requirements to become a Master Gardener. So that means a training process. It means also completing community service, volunteer hours, and continuing education. So I always say that we are lifelong learners, especially with gardening, because there's always new things to learn and there's new challenges and new successes and new failures and just wonderful opportunities to keep learning and to keep growing and learning how to be outside and do gardening in better ways. So it's a really fun experience. So today, our top 5 is about caring for your trees. So I feel like sometimes we think we can just kind of almost sort of neglect our trees, like they don't need as much care as maybe our vegetable plants or our flowers or things like that, but they still need some care and some proper management. So I want to share some top 5 tips with you today. So, number one, if you're looking at planting some trees or a new tree or anything like that, plant the right tree in the right place. We talk a lot about this with just regular flowers and vegetables and shrubs and plants in general. So, really, with trees, it's super important. Trees have their own needs. Some like more acidic soil, some don't. Some will need more space than others. So it's really important that you choose your tree and the site where you're going to put it really carefully. And that's going to be a measure of how much light that spot gets, what's the moisture like. A really great example is arborvitae. We tend to plant those. They're great for doing like a little privacy screen or almost like a fence line with arborvitae. But if you're planting arborvitae in a place where there's a lot of moisture, arborvitae don't like wet feet. So what that means is they don't like having wet roots all the time. So if it's a spot where you don't get good drainage or that's where the water kind of flows, your arborvitae are going to suffer. So things like that are great to think about. The pH of the soil, that's what I said. So that's a measure of how acidic the soil is. What growing zone we are. So here in southeastern Wisconsin, we're in a growing zone of 5A or 5B. As you move up to northern Wisconsin, those zones change, and the south of us, those change. So it's really important to plant plants that are specific to our growing zone, and that is a measure of kind of when it's going to frost and our winters and all those things too. And then also thinking about, well, this tree is going to grow and how big is it going to get? And do you have room to accommodate it in its full size? Are there any power lines or fences or houses or anything nearby, any structures that we need to watch out for? Um, and there's lots of trees that maybe aren't going to be so great in our environment. Maybe they're a non-native tree or an invasive tree that can cause damage. We don't want those non-native species or invasive species spreading to harm the rest of the environment. So there's lots of resources out there to help know what plants are really suitable for the Midwest. I will give you another example. I have a picture here of a Colorado blue spruce. Beautiful, beautiful tree. I love Colorado blue spruces, but they're really not suitable for the Midwest. If you think about their name, Colorado, Colorado is really dry. The Midwest here in Wisconsin, we have a lot of humidity. So you may plant these and they may do okay for a while, but over time, at some point, they will get usually a fungal disease and you'll start to see them browning. So beautiful trees. I love Colorado blue spruces, but not the best choice for here in the Midwest. So just lots of things to consider, especially when you're planting new trees or if you're kind of renovating an area where you're going to plant some trees. Really think about the plant itself and where you're going to put it. What's the soil and what's the moisture like in that spot? Okay, number 2, watering. Always important when we're talking about plants and really about proper watering. So sometimes trees need some water too, especially if you've planted some young trees. So they're going to require some more water than established trees. But even our full grown trees might need some water, especially going into the winter time to help them kind of stay stable over the winter. A lot of times in spring, we see winter damage, and that's just because trees have dried out during the winter, or it's gotten really cold and things like that. So the best way to judge if your tree needs some water is you can kind of just do a little soil test yourself of sticking your finger in the soil and seeing if it needs a drink. If the soil feels sort of cool and wet, then it's fine. If the soil's really hot and dry, it's going to require some more water. And this is going to vary depending on your tree too, how much water it needs. So especially if you've just planted some young trees, making sure they're getting adequate water. Number 3, this is probably one of the top things I can share with you, is about mulch. Mulch is wonderful. It helps conserve water for the soil around the tree. It also kind of helps the base of the tree so you don't get too close when you're weed whacking or lawn mowing and things like that. But we also say we like to see donuts, not volcanoes. And what that means is, you can see here in this picture that mulch is piled up into a volcano and it's touching the stem of the tree. It's touching the trunk of the tree. That is not good. We want to have a donut, which means you want to have space around the tree trunk, and then you can have the mulch layered up around the tree, but leaving a space like a donut around the trunk, and just having about a few inches of mulch around the tree. So what happens is, when it's piled up along the trunk, it can really cause a lot of disease. It can cause the trunk to rot, and it's going to cause problems. It can also cause girdling of the tree roots. And I'm going to show a couple pictures of that in just a little bit. So if you're mulching trees, and really making that donut and not a volcano of mulch around your tree, super important. Another really important one when planting trees is planting at the correct depth and taking care of the trunk. So in this picture on the left, you can see that tree trunk is coming straight out of the ground, almost like a telephone pole. And on the tree on the right, you can see this kind of flare as it goes into the roots. And the one on the right is the correct way to see that tree root flare. You want to kind of see that as it's going into the ground. This one on the left was planted too deeply, and again, going to cause additional problems like the girdling of the trunk by the roots, which essentially strangles the trees and can cause disease and things like that. Other things about the trunk, taking care of the trunk, we typically recommend to not be like putting signs or nailing things into the tree. Really just keeping that trunk intact. You can inspect it for holes. I mentioned frost cracks before, inspecting it for cracks. Anytime the trunk is damaged in any way, and again, I mentioned lawnmowers and weed whackers, if you get too close and cause some damage to the tree, that makes a pathway for more disease and insects. So sometimes they just need that little entry point to get in, and then can start making more damage on the trunk of the tree and the whole tree itself. So planting your tree at the right depth and taking care of the trunk are really important. So I wanted to show this picture of what it means for stem girdling roots, and you can see that this root is wrapping itself around the trunk of the tree. You can see this sometimes above the ground and sometimes right underneath the ground. So again, if you have a bunch of mulch piled up, you might not see what's happening. Sometimes you have to carefully dig down and see that, but it's going to really affect the tree negatively. It's going to cause the tree to grow poorly, or maybe it changes colors or lose the leaves really early. There's going to have some water stress issues because the tree moves things up from the roots. That's where it gets its water and nutrients, is from the roots in the soil, and then passes that up through the trunk, inside the trunk, all the way up. So it's going to have a hard time as those roots start to kind of strangle the tree. And you could be seeing more damage or some dieback in the trees. So this is a really common problem, unfortunately, and it's a preventable problem when we plant our trees correctly. I wanted to show this picture. This picture is from a friend of mine out in Pennsylvania. She had posted these pictures, and you can see where the hole was, where the tree was. So you can see that mulch was right up against the tree trunk, because you can just see that the hole just fits right where the trunk was. And she had this huge storm that came through and the tree toppled over. I'm also going to assume there was probably some girdling issues. And you can also see on the trunk of the tree where that mulch had been sitting, probably repeatedly year after year after year. Why is this important? Well, this was a fairly large sized tree that came down and fortunately did not hit her house, but you can see that it just tipped right over. It broke right off at the soil line. And I'm going to guess because of these issues, such as the girdling and that mulch being piled up, touching the tree trunk year after year. And our last top 5 tip for today is about protecting those roots. So if you're having some work done around the house, which is totally normal, or if you're building a new house and you're trying to preserve trees or anything like that, you have to think about the trees and think about their root zone. So in this picture, it shows the drip line, which is that kind of dotted line. The drip line is kind of where the tree is getting its waters from, but the root zone is going to expand a lot more from that. And approximately 90% of the tree's roots are located in the top 1.5 feet of the soil. And it can extend up to 3 times the width of the tree's canopy. So it's really important that we protect that whole root zone. And there are some strategies if you are building something or you're looking to build something or you're going to do some work, you know, maybe you can kind of mark off that root zone of the trees you're trying to protect so that large machinery or things like that don't drive over them. And because what happens is that large machinery driving over the root zone is going to cause compaction. The tree roots aren't going to be able to get the nutrients and the air and the water they need out of the soil because the soil has been so compacted. Soil compaction is a huge problem for roots and for our trees. So anything that you can do to either maybe mark that area off with some flagging, or that's a, you know, no way area, or if there's some digging happening, really working with your builder or your contractor or whoever's doing the work to have a kind of a safe plan in place to carefully, there are some ways to be carefully digging next to trees and really kind of managing what happens with those roots and being aware of that. I'll say this too, I get a lot of questions about trees, and sometimes the reason for a tree's decline or why it's looking sick is from things that happened years ago. So sometimes over time, it just kind of shows up. You know, we might be seeing something from winter damage, but we've had a couple of harsh winters in years past, and now we're starting to see the trees decline. Or maybe maybe a garage was put in and there was a lot of digging and soil compaction that happened 5 years ago, but now you start seeing something in the oak tree or another tree. So a lot of times tree problems don't show up right away. It's sometimes we have to think back when things have happened. So just be really aware of all those things. I wanted to share one more thing we talk a lot about on this program and in general about soil testing. So I just want to mention what does that mean? What is soil testing? Well, soil testing is when you take a sample of your soil, and it doesn't have to be much. You take a couple cups of your soil and you send it into our UW Soil and Forage lab, and they test it. And what that does is they test the pH, they test what sort of nutrients are in your soil, and they can make fertilizer recommendations. And you can test your soil anytime as long as it's not frozen. A lot of times we test in the fall or early spring because then if there are some recommendations on how to improve your soil, you have time in the fall and spring to make those amendments and let those kind of sink into the soil and work them in. And then they'll be ready for planting in the spring or in late spring. So you can sample different areas. You can sample your lawn. You can sample a vegetable garden or a flower garden. Everything you need to know is on their website, and I'll post that in the comments as well. And I'll tell you from personal experience that we did a soil test last fall, and for my 2 different vegetable gardens, and I learned what sort of nutrients to put down, what type of fertilizer and how much. And my vegetable garden is doing its best it's ever have this year because I added those amendments and really kind of paid attention to what the soil is like. Our soil is super important. We don't give enough credit to that dirt underneath our ground, underneath our feet. And it's really important to take care of the soil, and the plants are getting all their nutrients from the soil. So if you have things that aren't doing well or want to know maybe something to plant and pH levels and things like that, a soil test is the only way to really determine those things. So again, I'll post that link plus a ton of other links about trees into the comments. I'll give you my email address so you can ask any additional questions to me directly. I'd be happy to help you out. And I would love to hear your feedback. So I'll share a survey with you. It just takes a couple of minutes to fill it out. So if you're watching us live today or even another time, I'd love to hear your feedback. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen, Catherine. And if there are any questions we can answer, I would be happy to do that. And we have Sue and Heather joining us today, certified master gardeners in Walworth County.
We do have one question. I mean, it's from me, but you can answer my question.
Yes.
I don't know if you can see it or not, or if you need me to read it to you.
How about you read it to me? I don't see it yet. Did you put it on Facebook? I don't see it yet.
I did. I would love to. All right. So I'm having an issue with the maples in my yard. All the leaves are getting like little yellow spots, and it's not all the trees. Like, it's just my maples. Why? What's going on with my maples? That's my question.
Okay. With the heavy rains that we've been having, this could be one of the plant diseases that we have locally, and it could very well be cosmetic. Because it could be a plant disease, we're not sure exactly which one it is until we take it in and get it tested. Okay. That way you can, if it's cosmetic, then we don't have to worry about it. But if it's something more dire, then we can start addressing that issue. So it could be something. Have you seen it before on the plant?
It's something that I really noticed this year more than I've noticed in past years. And like I said, and it's just on the maples, because I have quite a few trees in my yard, and the other ones are near enough that were it something that were more than just the maples, I would assume that they would have transferred that way, because I checked, and like my oak is fine and everything. It's just the maples.
Yeah, I would agree with Sue that it's possibly and likely a fungal disease caused by even past years of having really wet springs, and that stuff tends to build up, and we're seeing a lot of those things this year. What you can do, Catherine, is send me some pictures, send me some close-up pictures of the leaves and of the spots, and I can help determine just from pictures and narrow down what it probably is. And if we need to send in a sample to the lab, we can do that too, to really, like Sue said, confirm any disease. A lot of the fungal diseases on our maples are, like Sue said, cosmetic, and you wouldn't really do treatment because it's not worth doing any sort of fungicide treatment. But good cleanup is going to help too, to take care of those diseased leaves kind of reinfecting other things. So as your leaves fall, getting them cleaned up, and don't put them in the compost. If you can burn them, if that's okay in your area, or bury them or bag them up and put in and send them away. Then you're kind of getting rid of that disease material too, so it doesn't keep reinfecting.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Because I've never noticed it before this year, and I was out mowing my lawn, and I was like, wait a second, like all the trees have spots.
Yeah.
So
really typical maples are famous for one called anthracnose, really cosmetic. A lot of trees get it, plants get it. I mean, it's all over the place. It's a fungal disease. Maples is just one that I always hear about, having it. But there's some other ones. There's some other leaf spot, and they're all fungal and usually nothing to worry about. But it's always good to confirm what you're seeing. And again, send me pictures and we can go from there.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Any other questions out there on Facebook land?
I don't know. While we're kind of seeing, I know there's a little bit of a delay. I'm going to post some resources. I'm also posting some YouTube videos about some really good resources and YouTube videos about how to properly plant a tree. And again, I mentioned how important that is. These videos, even though they're from other universities, they're really good, and they're really really easy to watch, and some really useful tips.
Well, if we don't have any comments, I have a question I could ask.
Go for it.
Yeah.
So at our house, we've got a bunch of, I don't know what kind of pine trees they are because they were here when we moved in, but the lower branches are all dead or mostly all dead. So we're debating whether to chop off the lower branches or to leave them for, shade and ground cover.
Pine trees are really susceptible to some fungal diseases as well. There's some information that I can share with you, Heather, on our Learning Store, UW Extension Learning Store website, a conifer disease guide. Most of the time, those diseases, really, there's not much you can do. You can prune the lower branches. Are you seeing it at the lower branches?
Yeah, the lower
Primarily?
branches are just dead.
Yeah, so there's a couple that kind of represent that disease. There's some needle blight diseases. Unfortunately, you can prune those lower branches and get them out of there, but that's about all you can do. I know that there's a few different names of fungal diseases that I can share with you. There's again, just some different ones, but pretty much treatment is all the same. Fungicide treatments would be really costly, would require professional equipment, and just it would be cheaper to plant a new tree than to try to save a tree. But again, it depends on what it is, and you can certainly send me pictures and we can kind of figure that out, and I can share those resources with you.
I would not recommend trimming those branches off right now, purely because if you do, and you cut it really close to the tree trunk itself, you can introduce more bacteria and fungal infection into the tree itself. If it's just, it could be just part of the way that the tree grows and in the process of dying as well. So just don't do anything about it yet until we know for sure what's going on.
What time of year would you suggest trimming?
Oh, that's isn't that early spring, late in the winter? I thought that was when that was done.
Yeah, typically, I mean, conifers are a little bit, I think they have a little bit more wiggle room, but I think in the fall and early spring are okay. I'm going to post a link to a conifer disease quick guide into the comments on Facebook too.
Well, wonderful. Anyone have any other questions, either in Facebook land or on our Zoom?
Okay.
So thank you guys so much for all the really wonderful information. I'm definitely going to send you some pictures of those leaves. I keep meaning to. I kept meaning to ask before, but I was like, we're not talking about trees yet. But now we are. What are we talking about next time?
Next time, I think we're going to do some alternatives to lawns. So we're going to talk about some rain gardens and flowering lawns and just some other choices. So you don't necessarily have to have turf grass for lawn. You have lots of different things you can do in your yard.
Wonderful. I'm going to have bring my questions for that too, because I have a really big lawn and I'd rather it be, I don't know, more natural, native.
Great.
Yeah. All right. Well, again, thank you guys so much. To all of you out there on Facebook, whenever you get a chance to watch this, please feel free to ask questions. Julie's left her email address. There's the word I'm looking for, and we'll check the comments as well. And if she doesn't see something, I'll make sure she does. So thank you guys so much for joining us.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye, guys. How do I do this?